In this video, I will show you how to pick up your heel stitches and remove the waist yarn. Today we're using Wool & the Gang's Kind of Magic sock yarn in Perfect Purple and a set of 5 2.5mm or US size 1 double pointed knitting needles. Let's get started. To begin working the heel section of your sock, you first need to pick up 30 stitches on either side of your yellow waist yarn. To do this, take one of your double pointed knitting needles and begin picking up the stitches beginning on the far right hand side. So to pick up that stitch, just insert your double pointed knitting needle through from back to front, and you should have one loop on your needle, and that's your first stitch. Now you're going to go into the next one, making sure to work into the row directly below your yellow waist yarn. Now you have 2 stitches, and just keep repeating those steps until you can count 30 stitches on your double pointed needle. And as you're working along, you might find it easy to think, pick up one strand and then skip the next. Pick up one strand, skip the next, like so. Always working just one row directly below the yellow waist yarn. And you might want to occasionally shift your stitches along, just so they don't get too close to the end of your knitting needle. Okay, now you've reached the end of your yellow waist yarn, so you should be able to count 30 stitches along this needle. And it's time to repeat exactly the same steps over on the other side of your waist yarn. And just work along, picking up those stitches. And remember, just pick up one strand and then skip the next. So that way when you remove your waist yarn and unzip those live stitches, they're all nicely attached to your knitting needles and you're not going to drop any stitches. So once you've reached the other end of your waist yarn, you should now have 30 stitches on each side and you're ready to start unravelling the waist yarn and working your heel. Once you've picked up all 60 of your stitches, it's time to evenly distribute them across all 4 double pointed needles. So take one of your empty needles, push the stitches to the end of the needle and transfer 15 onto the second needle. Okay, now those 2 needles each have 15 stitches on them, and just push them so that the stitches sit in the middle of the needle. And now do the same for the other needle. So just transfer 15 stitches onto the empty needle. Okay, so you now should have 15 stitches on each of your 4 needles. And it's now time to remove your waist yarn. So just do that. You might want to get your empty needle and just gradually unzip the yellow yarn. And don't worry, your stitches are going to be held completely securely on your needles. But it's a little bit frilly just to remove that yarn. But the more stitches you do, the easier it gets. It's just the first couple are a bit awkward. You can see that you're gradually beginning to open up your sock, and that's where your heel will be placed. one side done, and now you just need to do the second side. And it's just a bit of a time-consuming thing, but it's very straightforward. Just unzipping those stitches so you're ready to work your heel. And if you feel like your waist yarn is getting in the way, you can just cut that really short, just to speed up the process. Just a few more stitches to unzip. And there you have it, you've removed your waist yarn. So now let me show you what your first heel round is going to look like. So once you've removed your waist yarn, you can now work the first round of heel stitches. It's time to begin using the small ball of yarn that you wound off, ready to work the heel when you first placed the waist yarn earlier on in your pattern. So you're going to take that ball of yarn and pass it through the opening. And the place where it's attached is where you're going to begin your round. So when you're knitting across your stitches, you're going to pick up one additional stitch at each edge, and this prevents gaps from forming. So take your working needle, and in between the first and fourth needle, you're going to pick up a stitch just by inserting your working needle in, wrap the yarn around, and pull it through. Might be a little bit fiddly just because of where it's attached. There we go. So you've picked up one new stitch at the edge. And now you're going to work across your heel stitches as normal. Just by knitting across them. Knit across all the stitches on your next needle. And once you've knitted across your first and second needles, it's now time to pick up another edge stitch, just to make sure that no gaps form at the edge of your heel. So insert your working needle into the gap between the two needles and pick up one stitch just by wrapping your yarn around and scooping up a new stitch, like so. Then knit across needle 3 as normal. Knit needle 4 as normal, and then you will have completed your first heel round. So there you have it, that's the first heel round, and you've increased by 2 stitches just to close the gaps at either edge. So simply follow your instructions to complete the heel, and then your first Kind of Magic sock will be finished.